Hello, welcome to this latest Scoutcast, which is taking place in lockdown. I think we frame it as a Scoutcast extra in these times without actual football. So, in this latest edition, what we're going to be looking at is our mental health. My name is Joe.
My name is Andy.
And my name's Neale.
Andy, so tell us a bit about what's going to take place in this show. So I've already said mental health seems to be the key topic that we're talking about. So what's happening?
Yeah, pretty much. So we kind of looked at it in a previous Scoutcast, although that was with Az and David, so get a couple of different perspectives today. I talked about stepping back from it a little. Obviously, we've kind of had that a bit enforced on us right now, having to step back a little bit from FPL as there is none. And we're going to talk about it again here and kind of we'll probably tie in a bit, I'd say, about mental health during lockdown as well. So obviously these are kind of extraordinary times right now. And at the end, as always, we're going to talk about something that is filling people's times right now, which is virtual FPL. We're going to talk about how we're getting on and kind of transfers and stuff like that.
Yes, indeed. So, as you said, we have mentioned, we have talked about FPL and mental health in a previous Scoutcast. Now, a lot of people, when I say to people who don't play fantasy football about mental health, a lot of them are quite dismissive. It's just a game. It's just a silly game. So what's the fuss all about? But the thing is, we addressed that issue and we got a huge amount of feedback from loads of people saying, welcoming the fact that we were talking about it, but also revealing how the links between playing FPL and fantasy games and their mental health and all of those things all coming together, and it can create good moods, bad moods, and sometimes it can get a bit more challenging. And some people, it's not so much. But with lockdown continuing, we thought it was high time to revisit this subject because, mental health is an important issue always, and it's especially important now because we're in lockdown and there's a lot of big issues going on that we've got to try and process and deal with. We're just mere mortals, really, and difficult to do. So it's something from the World Health Organization to get the ball rolling. Now, this is where playing a fantasy game, playing FPL can get a bit more challenging. And so I'll just say this is a kind of, some people, this might chime with some people. So basically, simply playing a game a lot is not enough to count as a disorder or a challenge when it comes to gaming addiction and those types of issues. But a disorder can form when there is a pattern of persistent or recurrent gaming behaviour. So this is essentially where people can lose control of their behaviour, starts to impact on their normal lives and affects moods and relationships as well. So for gaming disorder to be diagnosed, the behaviour pattern must be of sufficient severity to result in significant impairment of personal, family, social, educational, occupational or other important areas of functioning, and would normally have been evident for the last 12 months. Now, I raise that as an issue, and most people go, well, that's not me. But some people watching and listening will say, hang on a minute, that is me. This game does impact on my emotional well-being for bad and good as well sometimes as well. So what we're going to talk about is the challenges that people face, but also about some of the good things as well about playing FPL, and some of the things that we can get to help our mental and emotional well-being from the community, from the community themselves. So, after all of that, really, let's start with the sort of, I guess, the negative first, because it's always good to sort of end on the positive. So we'll start with the negative side of it. So, coming to you first, I'll go for you first, Andy. Are there periods where playing FPL, playing fantasy game, for whatever reason, affects your mood? And if so, how do you meet that challenge?
Yeah, I think this is going to be an obvious one, which I think probably affects a lot of us. And I did put a tweet out and kind of people probably know Apple Bonkers Doug. He kind of said if anyone says it doesn't affect their mood, they're probably lying. And I can agree with that. Like, there's a classic case of when you're on, it's a weekend, you've had a really, really bad score out of nowhere, especially when everyone else has done well. Then it can put you in a bad mood. It doesn't necessarily always do, but it definitely can. I've had that before. I think I've kind of got better at dealing with that. I don't specifically know how. In certain cases, it just, I don't know. To give an example is probably easier. So we talked a lot about Mane, I know, but that's the most recent thing, the triple captaincy. When that happened, like in the past, I probably would have gotten really annoyed about that. That would have been the evening kind of written off. Wouldn't have wanted to do anything else. But I think the more I've played, the more I kind of understand that there's just luck involved. I just had to laugh that off. But there are weekends when, in the past, where I've had a really, really bad score, and I can just tell like I'm a bit more irritable. Like I'm not going off the rails or anything like that, but I'm just a bit more irritable and I'm quieter and stuff like that. And to be honest, I wouldn't say I necessarily have a good way of dealing with that. I have ways I deal with FPL in general, which probably are helping me kind of get better at that. So one of the ways I do that is, and it's going to sound counterintuitive for someone that not only works in FPL but also does FPL stuff in kind of spare time. But I really try not to overthink FPL too much. If I've got like a gut feeling on a player or a captain, I will not spend my entire week then. Apart from if I'm creating content, I will not spend my entire week thinking about my own team, every tiny little detail that could possibly affect that decision. Because if you do all that and then it doesn't come off, I think that just makes you feel even worse.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying people shouldn't do that. I do research, but once I've made my decision, I try, and it doesn't always happen, but I try and stick with it, because I just feel the more the more research you do, especially like right up until the deadline, if you're still constantly switching your mind, then it makes you feel worse when it doesn't pay off. Obviously, you got the counter of that. When it goes well, then it's the different story. But yeah, I think mood definitely gets affected on weekends when it goes against you. Like I said, I've got better at that, but yeah, I think it's just trying to understand that it's not just a game. Like I wouldn't say that it is more than that to a lot of people, including myself. But it's a game you can only control so much. It's not like a video game when maybe it's a bit more. If you do something wrong and you've done something wrong in FPL, you just make the wrong decision, and it could have, it could have been completely logical, but it just didn't work out. And it's not the same in other like video games, like I say. So yeah, it's just trying to remember that, which isn't always easy, but that's what I try and do at least.
Yeah, you raised some really, really good points there, and I think when we've spoken about this before, and also when we spoke, canvassing the views of the community on this, one of the issues that arises is that feeling, that sense that you've invested so much of your time and energy into poring over some stats and making that decision, and then for it to fall flat on your face. So a classic example in the past, I remember agonising over whether to get Harry Kane in, and looking at all the figures, and it looked great, fixtures, form, and all of that kind of thing. And then he's got a plum home game, and then he comes away with a blank. And you invest so much in that kind of research, and then for it to not pay off. So yeah, the way to meet that challenge, I guess, has to be to accept that fate. That fate is a big part of it, and to try. I mean, it's difficult, isn't it, to say try and lighten up. And if you say people outside of fantasy football, Harry Kane, I got Harry Kane in and he got blanked. And you say that, people, and they go, what? Who cares? But you say that to a fantasy football manager and they go, I share your pain. And that's the thing. And
they're probably the best people to speak to as well, because they do understand that pain.
It's the acceptance. We need to accept that it is an issue. It's not just a game. We have to accept it does affect moods. And then, it's difficult to move on otherwise.
Well, one thing, just to kind of go back to what I was saying before, like I mean, during the week, like it's hard to completely switch off. And like I say, like if I've made a decision, I'll try and stick to it. But the time when I really try and switch off is when the breaks are enforced. So if there's I used to hate international breaks. Now I love them, because it gives me a break from having to think about it too much. And again, there'll still be stuff to do. There's work to do, videos to be made or whatever. But I won't spend the whole 2 weeks thinking about my own team and every decision I'm going to make, because I feel like there's obviously some in-betweens, but most people are either they make the decision early on and they do their transfers, or they're going to wait till the end. So if you're going to wait till the last couple of days to make the transfer anyway, you probably don't need to spend 14 days thinking about every single tiny thing. And it's the same thing in like this. I mean, it's a bit different right now because I'm playing virtual FPL and Championship Manager FPL, because it's just different circumstances which we don't need to go into. But like during the summer, again, I won't give it too much thought. I might think about content that's going to come next year and stuff like that. But I won't, every single second of my day won't be spent thinking about FPL. So I try, if it's an enforced break, especially, I really try and switch off from giving it too much thought. And then, and to be honest, that makes you come back a bit more refreshed. Like you want it to come back. Like now, at the start of lockdown, I was like, all right, well, FPL's gone. It's not so bad. Now, I could really do with doing some FPL. Like it's kind of that urge to play it has kind of come back because we've been forced out of it.
And that's the positive side, which we'll come to in a bit. But that is a positive side to playing FPL and fantasy games. Neale, what about you? Bad game weeks, how do you react? And how do you make sure you don't react in a negative way?
I think every single game week you react to something in a negative way. There's always it might be a player you don't own who's scored, a player you do own who's been substituted early or sent off or scored an own goal or lost a clean sheet later on. So there's always something. There's at least one incident every game week which kicks you in the stomach. And no matter how experienced you are, I mean, I've been playing the best part of 2 decades, it still stings to some extent, even if you do get better at coping with it. So you just got to accept that these things will happen. They're out of your control, and hopefully there's as many good moments as there is bad. So yeah, I think obviously you shouldn't conflate or confuse just a bit of mild anger with bad mental health, because there's differences between the two. Obviously, this is a game that's designed to make you experience the peaks and troughs, and many people can deal with it and then shut off at the end of a game week. And I think probably when we've done this before, some of the reactions, although it was mostly positive, is why are you doing this? This is just a game. This doesn't mean anything. Why are you taking it so seriously? And to some extent, I can kind of understand that, because it is designed to be just a game. It is just coloured shirts on a piece of paper, racking up imaginary points that don't really exist. But obviously, I mean, for example, I used to work in the bookies when I was a student. I can see a lot of parallels there. I think if you've got, for starters, if you've already got underlying problems, then FPL is certainly capable of acting as a catalyst, making things worse, as gambling was and is. So yeah, I when I used to work in as a student in the bookmakers, and you'd see very, very similar sort of behavioural traits. So mood swings when things go wrong, people chasing losses. In that sense, it was financial. In FPL, it's trying to immediately rectify your points with less than logical decisions. So we call it sort of rage transferring players out, or knee-jerk and transfers it. So there are familiar patterns, and I'm not naive enough or gullible enough to think that even because I largely have a handle on it, there aren't people out there who are seeing the worst of FPL and getting the worst out of it, I think. So yeah, I can remember real standout moments from the past where it's really, really been a kick in the nether regions. I mean, I remember benching Gail Clichy. Now, this was 6 or 7 years ago. And this still sticks in my mind, which just shows you it can have a lasting effect. It can scar you. He scored a 15-pointer away at Southampton, and I benched him for that week. I haven't played him for the entire season before that. This was when Southampton were good. This was when Koeman was in charge and all the rivals. So that still sticks in my mind. So obviously it does have a lingering effect. Dropping out the top 1K towards the end of 2017-18, that still sticks in my mind. Still rue that. That was my Gerrard slip. Selling Salah before his whole last season, which was probably my most famous blunder. You remember that was well documented. I saw them before his hat trick. So there are examples from every season you can go back in. And I think, as Andy said there, I think I'm getting better slightly at dealing with them. I sort of laughed it off when Salah scored his hat trick, which where in the past it might have really affected me. That so yeah, it's hard to not being a trained counsellor or a psychiatrist or a psychologist. It's hard to distill advice into some meaningful soundbite for people who are suffering.
Well, hopefully, people watching and listening, because we're all part of the FPL community. So when they're on Fantasy Football Scout forum, they're on Twitter, Instagram, wherever they chat about FPL online, and especially online at the moment, because you can't go down the pub and have a chat with your friends about it. And hopefully, just simply all of those examples you've raised there, they do mean a lot of the time. But when you chat about them to other people, because they will find other people would have done the same as well. For example, you raised the moment with Salah as well, when he got his hat-trick. And loads of people transferred him out the week before that.
Yeah.
That was you're talking about the Bournemouth game.
That's right, yeah. His hat-trick.
Loads of people transferred him out then. So just all of you sticking together, just saying, look, we all did it. And I'm still scarred. I remember the one that really haunts me is when I transferred out Firmino for Lallana, and Lallana got injured after 10 minutes. Firmino moved into his position and then scored a brace in Lallana's position. It's fate, because it was an injury as well. So it wasn't necessarily a poor decision, but it still haunts me to this day a little bit. At the time, it was like, oh. But now I can laugh about it now.
They often make the best anecdotes, don't they, further down the line? Like, no one really cares about your success stories 5 years' time, no. But your spectacular fails often make the best anecdotes in the future. So you just be aware that if this does happen in the future, you will look back on it eventually and laugh about it.
I think
as much as at the time.
One of the reasons I read out that World Health Organization view is because it shows how playing a game like FPL can over a period of time, over a year or so, your mood, you can have an actual problem. In the same way that people do. You mentioned gambling, and same way with maybe alcohol, maybe it's smoking cigarettes. It's all of those things, and if it's affecting, a lot of those things are going to affect your physical health. But if the other side, say gambling and a gaming addiction of some kind, if that is affecting your behaviour and your mental health in that way, then the important thing to do is obviously to address that. So, but the first thing before that, you've got to accept it. So, to be told if you've got a problem with decisions not going your way within a game, and I'm going to just use that loosely, any game that could be. It could be playing poker, it could be anything. Then the first thing you've got to do is, if that is impacting on your mental health, is accept it. Accept that it is. You must understand. It's like that whole thing with, I'm so-and-so and I'm an alcoholic, that kind of thing. But you've got to do that. You've got to accept that it's a problem. And if it's not a problem, well, then carry on. But then moderate it. Some people give up FPL. They've accepted it, and they think the only thing they can do to combat those negative, poor feelings is just to give it up totally. But other people, like you can do with, like I say, alcohol is a problem for many people, and they have to give it up. But for a lot of people, presuming all of us, we can have it moderately. We can have alcohol moderately, and I think, well, maybe not in Andy's case, but you can have it. You can moderate it, and that's the same thing with FPL. And it's exactly that point Andy was raising earlier. Is like in those breaks, you take the break from it as well, and that is your brain and your body's way of moderating your behaviour about it. It all sounds really serious to a lot of people who don't play it, because as you said, Neale, it's you moving little shirts around a computer screen. Why are we even talking about this? Some people would say.
Yeah.
But the very fact that when we put this topic out on social media and on Fantasy Football Scout, and we got lots of people answering, and lots of people saying, glad you're talking about this. So there we are.
One thing. Sorry, yeah. Just quick before we go on to positives, like one thing that came out, FPL Fozzy, he said, like, when you've had a bad game, to go and talk about it on forums and streams and stuff like that, because there's always someone in a similar boat, and it kind of gives you a perspective, which is what you mentioned. The only thing I kind of add on to that is, and I'm sure I know I'm guilty of this, and to be honest, everyone else is. And again, if you don't say you are, you're probably lying. When people have had a good week, you're going to hear about it more. I think that's just everyone's like that. I will obviously, I do videos every week. We all come on Scoutcast and stuff like that, so we all talk about our bad game weeks. But chances are you'll probably talk about the good ones a bit more. Especially, you might be a bit more active on social media, or a bit more active on forums and stuff. So I think you have to accept that unless you've got the number one game week rank, there's always going to be someone that's done better than you. So you kind of got to accept that. And also, like when I started playing, it was 10 years ago. The social media wasn't really that big of a thing. Whereas like in terms of like Twitter and stuff like that, now it is. And I do think, I love social media for so many reasons, but it can also be bad. And I really think if you can't accept people because what I find now is a lot of people are chasing followers, and again, can completely see why. But the more followers you have, the more stick you get. Like, and I can tell you this from first, like, if I make a bad decision, and I've talked about it either on a video or I've tweeted about it, and that player blanks or they go off injured, or Manny triple captain, like I said, gets injured, I don't need to check the scores. I will be told about that. Loads and loads of mentions. And I can accept that. That's just part of the game. And I kind of find it fun because I will talk about when I do well as well. But I find a lot of people just can't kind of take that. And it can be frustrating at times. But I think if you're chasing followers, but then you also can't deal with people telling you when you've done badly, even though you should probably, again, it's all about giving yourself a break. It doesn't mean you come off social media forever. If you've had a bad week, checking social media on a Saturday evening is probably not the thing to be doing. If you can't accept that someone's done better, and if you've done bad, a few people are probably going to start telling you about it as well. So, yeah, I think breaks are really important, social media in particular.
Yeah, and it's also...
That was one of the things I was going to mention there. Even though I can't offer any kind of professional counselling advice, I think practical tips. Andy just said, stay the hell off Twitter and Fantasy Football Scout site. If you've had a bad game, just don't. You talk about how good the community is, but that's when it's probably at its worst, at its braggart worst, when they're crowing about their scores, because you rarely have people coming on and admitting they've had bad game weeks, with the exception of a few people. So I think yes, people DM folk and talk to people if you need to console on somebody, but like just stay off the timeline, because it just rubs it in, and just give it a wide berth for the duration of the game week, and then go back on and then start afresh, because I do it. If I've had a bad game, I stay off Twitter, because I don't tend to share my scores either way anyway. I know other people are doing that, and I don't want to. And as Andy said there, chances are you haven't had as bad game week as what you think. I mean, the averages will tell you that. But you can get the impression from your timeline that everyone's had an absolutely brilliant game week and captaincy successes and things like that. So just stay off.
I think. I find, and one thing to do. I mean, this happens over time with social media and whenever you're on forums and that type of thing. Is just spotting the difference between someone just simply having a good brag because they've had a good week, and someone who's an actual troll who is targeting you because you've had a bad game week. They're turning that into something messy and personal about you and your behaviour. Oh, you've had a bad game week, you must be an awful human. And that kind of thing. And it's differentiating between those trolls, because some people are just having a laugh. Bants with a Z. But other people
I hate that word so much.
I know, that's why I said it in
up there with top
sort
bins,
of verbal
top bins is okay.
But some people are just absolutely just nasty.
I cannot, honestly, I could do a whole podcast on this. I think I could not recommend the mute and the block button more. Now, like I said, I put myself out there. So if someone wants to tweet me when I've had a bad time, I really don't mind that. And like I say, when a decision goes bad, I'll usually find out about it first. But when like one person is constantly on your case every single day about something, or they give you abuse, like when it starts turning into abuse, that's totally different. Just mute them or block them and move on. There's no point in engaging with those people. It will never do you any good ever. I know whether or not you mute or block. I mean, people will say block. I like to mute because then they keep talking into the ether. They don't realise, that you can't see what they're saying. But I use them all the time, honestly, without even giving it thought these days.
There's a good. I was just going to say, just on a linked theme with that, there's a good charity. I think they're called Countering Digital Hate. They've just been quite instrumental in getting David Icke's comments removed from YouTube and other social media, but what they do is quite interesting, and they do recommend exactly what you just said there, Andy. Mute, block, use the tools all of that are there, and appropriate to how you feel you want to deal with them, because that can affect your mental health. And that we've all got quite a few followers because we do this kind of thing. But whether you've got 10 followers, 100 or 100,000, it doesn't matter, because all you need is one person to be a nasty so-and-so, and it can affect your mental health. So mute them away.
Definitely. I think obviously most of us are paid for what we do, so it's fair enough to cop some criticism. If I've put out an article that says or hints that one player is an essential purchase, I tend not to do that. Then I deserve all the flack that's coming my way if he flops. But if someone is using you as a scapegoat for things out of anyone's control, the chaos element of football and FPL, then you quickly learn which ones, which people's in which camp.
Yeah.
And we all know who, certain individuals.
Yeah.
Mute away, because they won't change. There aren't redemptive stories there. They tend to have familiar behavioural patterns. And I'll engage in anyone about articles I've done or debate, but you can tell when they're in the sort of sore loser camp and they're just looking for someone to lash out at. And us being in the positions we are,
and
very privileged position.
That indicates that it's going to affect your mental health if someone's just targeting you in that way. But that indicates way much more about their own mental health. And I don't mean that in a negative way, even though they're being nasty. Because I think in a lot of time, the people who are being nasty in that way, there's other things going on.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Their mental health attitudes towards FPL and people talking about FPL are just indicative of perhaps other things going on that perhaps they need to accept and then and sort of react in their own way. Hey, let's talk about some positive things.
Is there positive stuff too?
Because there is. Because we all like playing FPL. We all like fantasy football.
I hate it.
And we're all in little boxes on a screen on YouTube or little voices on a podcast if you're listening to this. Talking about FPL, so obviously we do like it. So it can have a really good effect on our mental health as well. Andy, I know that there's something you wanted to mention about the way the community can be around that.
Yeah, like the community, and I can always say it with the community. I know it gets a lot of stick sometimes. It's not the best, and people are only out for themselves and stuff. But when you start thinking about what the community has done, so just to give some really quick examples before I go into the ones I'm going to talk about. So, FPL General has a mini league for the Calm charity. So that raises not only awareness, and that's going to help other people, but also raises money as well. When I raised money for Movember, that was the FPL community that helped out with that. So there's loads of kind of things that people are doing, like Planet FPL are doing a 24-hour stream. And it's for the NHS, and it's not necessarily specifically for a mental health charity, but you can bet that it will get a lot of people together and again start raising awareness. And it just creates positivity, which can only be a good thing, especially when in a world where negativity tends to be where the clicks come from. But I've actually got a couple of stories. So these are people that have messaged me in the past. And look, it's not necessarily they just watch my stuff. It could be my stuff, Scout, whatever it is. So the first one, I won't mention any names, but I was speaking to him and he said it's fine to talk about it. So he said he was suffering from PTSD for some time, went into rehab for alcohol detox, which he's been trying, or I think he's been in recovery for 7 years. And he basically said that the FPL community, it basically made him feel part of it, and he couldn't get out much due to health issues, and that kind of made him stay a bit more positive. And I asked him today whether I could talk about this, and just asked him how he was getting on. He said he's now been a year sober, just handing a final assignment of a degree at 50 years old, hoping to get a first. And next year, he's just been accepted onto a course to do a master's in mental health and substance misuse. So, and again, I'm not saying that the FPL community is the only reason that he got over that, but it was certainly a big factor, the fact that he took time to message. And another guy messaged me the same thing. He had a tough year with personal things, but kind of FPL streams and content and stuff that people are putting out in the community really helped him get through it. So even though content creators might not, I'm sure a lot of people just see it by just talking about FPL and it doesn't mean much, but probably are a lot of people that are watching, and it's almost giving them something to do. Like I know for me, kind of like I've been trying to lose weight and stuff for ages, and that's been like such a mental hurdle. And creating FPL content in my spare time, back even before I worked doing FPL stuff, was a good way to take my mind off stuff and just give me like something to do almost. So yeah, I can totally get with that. I think people who are doing podcasts and stuff out there, writing articles and all that stuff, it probably does give people a kind of a good outlet. And being part of a community, whether you like to admit it or not, there is a community out there. Full of mostly great people as well. I think it's quite easy to focus on the trolls sometimes, but realistically, they are a pretty big minority, and I think the FPL community comes together quite a lot to do stuff, and I think that has helped out a lot of people.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Neale, presumably you're obviously aware of the reaction that some of the things that you get, that you write and talk about as well. But also just in general, have you noticed that sort of positivity and that good mental health side to FPL?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, and obviously, as Andy said there, you can it's human nature to dwell on the negatives rather than the positives, but overwhelmingly, it's a great thing. This, and I hate the word community as well. I try and avoid it wherever possible. But I think I can just cite an example from earlier in the season when myself and Andy both got hacked, and I was sort of faintly embarrassed by the whole attention I was getting, because to me it is just a game, and there was obviously the initial shock had been more hacked than having FPL losses, rather than someone's personal information being compromised than the FPL side of it itself. But a lot of people who were, went out the way to just sort of saying well wishes and things like that for something that was very, very, a minor setback in the grand scheme of things. Just shows you how many nice people are. Even when I write my articles, I'm paid. I'm a salaried worker at Fantasy Football Scout. I don't really want or expect any kind of praise for anything I write, because it's my job and it's what I do. And the more people who go out the way to say that they enjoyed the piece or want to debate the piece, even if they don't agree with parts of it, is constantly humbling, really. Again, I think the people who don't do this full time and who we've talked about them in recent weeks, Ragabody with Virtual FPL, the lads who've done the Champman FPL, they've got jobs. They are really doing this for the love of the community. They're setting stuff up like that out of the good of their own heart. They're not doing it for any kind of remuneration. So that's the example of the FPL world at its finest. And Joe, I'm sure you're going to come onto this yourself, but I remember last year when you had your health issues, people rallying around you there. We've seen so many good charitable ventures set up through this. I know Peter Kuvenberg, I think that's his name, who's a Scout alumni, runs a charity tournament every year. Again, that's all come through FPL. And I just think, as much as I'm pretty much an introvert and I tend not to share too much personal information on Twitter, it has to be purely FPL rated. But it's a great outlet for someone who maybe hasn't got loved ones to confide in or a big friend circle. And if they're going through tough times and then, or lost somebody or having relationship issues, you've seen numerous examples of that through the years, then where else would they turn to? And they're getting help from well-wishers there. So
that's often what people say about, say, Twitter or Facebook and Instagram, is that Facebook and Instagram are more where you lie to your friends. Here's this picture with this amazing filter.
But I hate Facebook.
Except that's not actually my life. Because if you pan out, it's got all the kids screaming and it's chaos. But Twitter's where you tell the truth to strangers. Because people tend to have more Twitter followers. They're not all people they've ever met personally. And they're strangers in a way, and then you get to know them, but you're telling the truth. And that's what you said. Countless times I've seen on Twitter people telling the truth, and we'll come to this in a minute, some of the things the community have been saying about their own mental health as well. But and I think it can be really valuable. A couple of things have been raised already about, I think for me, empathy is important, and you get that a lot in the FPL community. And I don't want this to turn into a sort of like, good and bad of the FPL community, because we're talking about mental health here as well, because it's just all part of it, really. But so it could be your family at home having empathy. Oh God, I'm so sorry that you sold Salah before his hat-trick. From your partner or your kids would go a long way to helping, just understanding. Or it might be just funny if they just say, I can't believe you're just so upset that a bloke you've never met has scored 3 goals. But it's just either laugh it off or just have some sort of empathy going on there. But for people to take the mickey out of you about it, saying it's only a game or whatever, all those kinds of, it doesn't help. That doesn't help at all. I mean, I always think as well that there is that sense of camaraderie, I think, like any community, really. And I think they can be so supportive. You mentioned some few occasions there as well, and I mentioned the time when I was ill last year, was in hospital, and I couldn't communicate with the community on text because it was just too difficult to do, really. So I couldn't be on Twitter or the Fantasy Football Scout forum or anything like that. But I could hear podcasts. I was very grateful to hearing that. So I was getting that sense of camaraderie there. So I think some of the examples you've given of people there, and I remember I was explaining my situation because it affects your mental health, and someone I won't mention their name, but a while ago, someone who was in a very similar situation, same kind of health problem as well, and same period of in hospital, go through the same thing. It's just chimes with people as well, and that can count right the way across social media and whoever it is you communicate with. And so the gist of it really is that there can be a great sense of community and camaraderie and help and support about all sorts of mental health issues that are going on, but especially about how the mental health side of playing a game is as well. Here's some community feedback as well. So I was mentioning about how we're all camaraderie together and all of that. So FPL Classico, as I said, sometimes when bad luck hits, I wish I could spend less time researching. It gets more annoying seeing those who care less about the planning seem to do much better when I get punished for knowing too much. And that's exactly the point he's raised, and that is an issue. Perhaps you need to reduce how much time you put into it, or just accept that there's going to be luck involved in that as well. Jack Brokenshire, as for how it affects me, I sometimes find myself laying awake at night obsessing over transfers. Now, how much is that line going to chime with people? Because I know it chimes with me. I want to get better at switching off from it, plus to not get too down after bad game weeks. The good ones do make it more bearable. So, it just gives an insight into what goes through the fantasy football manager's mind. Sam Trafford, I think you've got to work out how to accept the process, the lows as well as enjoying the highs. You can't hedge out the lows, so that's acceptance there I was talking about. You can't just enjoy the highs, you have to accept the lows, and that's it's not how feelings work to just permanently think everything's going to be rosy all the time, because it's not. And there's a Dead Star as well. Now, this is quite interesting. He said, "Hi Joe, and hope you and the team are well. Talk about a mixed bag when it comes to fantasy football, emotional well-being. On one hand, I'm currently enjoying not having the stresses of competing in fantasy football, specifically talking about the lockdown we're going through here. And believe me, I do take it seriously. In fact, I find it hard to play any game casually. Despite this, I do miss the highs that come with it too. The joy of celebrating a goal for your player, or that feeling of smugness because you choose to pick a certain player as first sub when you knew there was a chance for the rest of one of your first teamers." So this is exactly what we're talking about here, about subbing a good player and trying to deal with that. FPL is a roller coaster, and a big reason why I'm even still into football. So I mean, it just shows that those highs and lows that are going on there, the joy of celebrating. And here's one from FPL Virgin as well that's mentioned. The most infuriating thing an FPL pundit can say is that it's just a game. Well, I hope we haven't.
Oh, you're in trouble, Neale. You're in trouble.
Wow, infuriating. But I don't think Neale has been just saying it's just a game. He's been accepting the highs and lows and talking about the mental well-being behind it. So it's much more nuanced than that. But yes, it can be frustrating. It's frustrating in general when people say it's just a game when it actually matters to you.
Yeah.
And FPL affects moods and ruins weekends. If I have a good game week, I'm nice and cheery to people close to me. If I have a bad game week, I'm irritable and short, and the people around me have no idea why. That brings it all full circle, really, to what we were talking about earlier about some of the mental health side of things, and that they can potentially get quite serious if it is affecting your mood in a negative way and affecting those around you and your relationships with people around you. Just before we chime off of that, I've got a couple of more things I wanted to say, but anything else you wanted to add before we move on to a virtual world?
I think we were saying there about it affecting your moods and how you treat other people as well. I think that might be the time to delete your account. I know that seems very, very drastic, but if you're suffering for year upon year upon year, and this behavioural pattern isn't changing, then you've got to try and address something, whether that be seeking external help for deeper issues or just siphoning lancing the boil of FPL. And then, because I had a friend, my former job, very good FPL manager, was top of our mini league, very competitive mini league. I think around about game week 22, January time. There was the year in which there was a midweek postponement. I think Arsenal were meant to have a double game week, and then was it Arsenal v Bolton was called off because of snow at the Emirates? It was something like that anyway. And he'd set up well for this. He'd planned in advance. He got 3 Arsenal players in. And then, of course, the second game was postponed. So he quit on the spot and has never been back. And that was 10 years ago, I think. So I think if it really is affecting you on a sustained level for a long period of time, and that is obviously a catalyst to other issues that you've got, then I think the time could be to at least take a step back from it until you've addressed the wider issues.
Taking a step, and
delete your account. I think there's nothing. It's not worth it. The small amount of highs you get out of this is not worth the. If it is causing you misery on a weekly basis every weekend, then you got to wonder what you're doing playing it. So
it's accepting.
I've got someone else to delete it for you. Yeah,
move on. I mean, I've found when it has affected my mood, and consistently bad game weeks all the time, and is to take that step back. What Andy was saying earlier, and that had really helped, taking a step back, but not giving up entirely. But I have thought about it a couple of times, and I'm sure every FPL manager has at some point, and it can work for some. But I think for most of us, I think that moderation is perhaps what's needed sometimes. Andy, do you have anything else you wanted to add about the issue?
No, I don't think so. I think that what Neale said earlier about rage transfers is definitely true, because I think people do that and then it makes it worse because they've not. Although, like I'm saying, don't overthink, but at least give it some thought. If you rage transfer and it goes wrong, you're just kind of in a cycle then. I feel like even if you can step back for 24 hours and come back to it, things will probably not seem so bad. But yeah, no, nothing else really. I think covered quite a bit.
There's a good article there on the site by Late Rise. I'll give a plug to that. It's about the comparison between poker and FPL, and he's talking about how the best managers tend to ride the improbable bad beats, as he calls them, and which ties into the rage transfer. And so, yeah, go and read that.
I mean, as has been mentioned, we are not mental health experts.
Nope.
We are fantasy football fans, and I've been a health journalist for a number of years, so I write about such things. But I'm not a qualified counsellor. But there are those out there. So if you've been affected by any mental health issues, please do seek advice from your GP and your NHS providers. There are also a number of great charities. We mentioned one already, Calm. I think they're on Twitter as Calm Zone, but a lot of online support as well there. Mind are another great charity. And if you're younger, Young Minds is one I'd recommend as well. It's a charity I've dealt with for articles before, and they're very good. But there is help out there. It's not a case of there is no help out there. There is help out there. Do that. So, but meanwhile, we've been talking about the positive side of things. One way the community has been positive and using their interest in FPL during this difficult time for us all. It's virtual FPL, and that's something that we've all been playing to varying degrees of success. So I've got the latest Fantasy Football Scout moderators and contributors table.
Don't put that up.
I'm not going to dance upon your almost grave on this, Neale. But one thing I am pleased about, this is not to do with you, it's just simply I'm not last. Because as you can see, I'm second to last, and I'm quite close to Neale, and I have been last for, I think we're into 12 game weeks now, and I've been bottom for all of them. So this is like the first week I haven't been bottom of the table, but soon I'll be there, no doubt. Andy, you continue to do well, so tell us about for those who've been playing virtual FPL, tell us a bit about it, and how you've been doing, what have been your moves and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I can't even remember what the game week was the last time we did a Scoutcast. There's been so many in between, but I know we're going into game week 12, and I'm still sticking with my strategy, which is just to be aggressive, go for the fixture, not worry hugely about form, although I am looking at attacking involvement and stuff. So I'm back into the top 200 now, 196. Well, I was as high as top 50 at one point. So I bought Buendia in, I think I spoke about on the last one. I've taken him back out for Sarr. Even Sarr's gone now as well. So that's how quickly these games are moving. So Buendia went out for Sarr. Then I think Fernandez and Pukki both got injuries. So I took them out for Martial and Calvert-Lewin. I know a lot of people went kind of Traore and Rashford way. I went Martial and Calvert-Lewin. Martial's been doing really well. I even captained him one week. And then I did last week, I think it was or the week before last, was Stevens to Soyuncu, because Southampton's fixtures are just awful. So I started off with him. And then this week, I've completely knee-jerked. I've got Robertson, Wood, who I missed. And this shows that I'm giving it a bit of thought, but I completely missed that Chris Wood had lost his place. So I captained him last week, and he come on for a 0-pointer because he got a yellow card. My vice captain was Martial, who got 12 points, so that was frustrating. But so Robertson, Wood, and Sarr is back out just as quick as he's come into the team, and I brought Raul Jimenez in, so I'm now doubling with Jota up front. Perez and Alonso have come in. So yeah, like I said, I'm kind of going gut feeling on caps and stuff. Just looking at the fixture, who do I think is going to get beaten the most? Or I'm going to captain them. So right now, my captaincy is on Calvert-Lewin, who is playing Bournemouth away. Even though most people will go Liverpool, Man City, I figure that's probably a good way to try and jump up the ranks. So yeah, it's going okay. I don't know about you, Joe. You've done a bit better recently.
I mean, I'm on 5 green arrows in a row. So I'm doing, as you can see from the table, bad, but not as bad. But what I've been doing is I switched a while ago to a strategy of mixing the budget up. So in the way that virtual FPL copies normal FPL, so I've started using the same tactics I use in normal FPL, and that is to spread the love around. So I've got at the moment I've got Salah, but at that time I had Mane and De Bruyne, and the rest was just looking for value. Where can I get it? And I thought there's a lot between that 6 to 8 million across the board. So the likes of Alexander-Arnold came in, Alonso came in, Perez has come in, Jimenez, Rashford. So these types of players are getting those types of returns, are getting good returns. You know, yes, Kane, Adebayor and Aguero are doing well in this, as they do in normal FPL, but the money you save from that extra, say, 5 million of getting Jimenez instead of Aguero, you can move and you can, get, good players. So I've some weeks I've had 8 out of 11 scorers, 7 out of 11. I think the last one was 6 out of 11. And so what I'm doing there is and also doing a few risks with the captaincy. I've captained Ali for a blank. He was actually one of my only blank players the other day. So the other thing I've done is I wildcarded from a position of relative strength. I say I was in the middle of lots of green arrows. Yeah, I wildcarded, and that saw me bring in the likes of Perez into midfield. It saw me be able to get Salah instead of Mane, and keep De Bruyne, get Ali in for coverage. So as I said, it made me kind of, it enabled me to kind of carry on that strategy. So anyone who's playing virtual FPL, anyone who's playing normal FPL, for me personally, I think spreading that budget around is paying off. You're getting more consistent returns. But for others who perhaps are going for a premium striker, I think that's a really good strategy. If you can, is try and get something like Kane, and then when his fixtures go a bit, maybe get Aguero in, and just use that as a kind of a rotating slot there. So, but yeah, Neale, obviously you're now down to my depths, but yeah, what have you been doing, and what do you plan to do?
Yeah, I can tell you how to play the game really badly if anyone's interested in that. Well, for starters, doff of the cap to Ragabody, who's done this game all on his own back without any kind of investment or anything like that. He's just done it out of the love of the game. And also to Top Marks as well, shout out to him, because he's produced a lot of data on this, again, in his own time, unpaid, which you'll see in the menu bar on our site, the guide to virtual FPL. You'll see all that. So with that as a given, I'll say that I did not want to play this whatsoever. I will say what Andy said earlier in the podcast, when he said that he relishes the downtime from FPL, and I do too. I tend not to play anything over the summer. I don't get involved in Elitserien or the Swedish League or the Tour de France fantasy, which I know is a thing. I don't play Champions League fantasy because I need the downtime. I didn't play Chapman FPL, as brilliant as that looked, and I wasn't going to play this. However, I am the nominated writer of virtual FPL roundups on the site, so I kind of had to get involved. And it is fantastic. It's a brilliant little simulated game. You get the highs and the lows as you would in FPL, frustrating rotation, and maddening clean sheet losses. So I've kind of adopted a completely different approach to what I normally do in FPL. I've gone very, very aggressive. I'm by and large a patient, boring, dullard FPL manager. I like to ride out the bad beats, as later I would say. Here I'm just messing around. I'm just transferring in people willy nilly for good fixtures, taking hits left, right, and centre. Now I'm doing absolutely terribly, and it's no one's fault but mine. But I'm resisting the urge to get too caught up in it. I saw somebody on Twitter complaining to another Twitter user that they've posted their good game week score, and they said have some dignity about it, and like think about people who've had a bad game. Well, I think if you're getting worked up about this, then really take a step back, because this is I'm very, very reluctant to get too invested in this, because I don't want to be. I'm not organising about my transfers. I log on about 5 to 7 every week, simulate some friendlies, have a quick look at Top Marks' sheet, do my transfers, and then I'm out. I don't stay and simulate the matches. I have a look at the scores at the end, and I'm doing absolutely awfully. And I dare say, even if the effort I have put in has been completely wasted, because I haven't cracked it. I have not cracked the code of how to play this. I'm just terrible at it. There's no escaping that. But I'm not putting in as much effort, which isn't to try and mitigate how badly I'm doing. It's just for the fact that I like the downtime that we're currently having from FPL. But it's great. It's nice to see the likes of Kane become a viable fantasy asset again, and all these sort of massive monster scores you get every week. And it is more goal orientated. That's a good thing. There's not as many clean sheets. There's a lot more attacking returns, and I think obviously that's a good thing, because you want to see that. That's the best part of FPL. Players scoring. You don't want to be rooting for clean sheets.
I wish normal FPL was like this.
Yeah. It's great, yeah, and it's really kind of reflecting FPL in a way, which makes sense, because Ragga Body's put a lot of FPL data into this to start with, and then it's running on current form as well. So the league table resembles what you'd expect the real life one to as well.
I mean, just back on the mental health side of things, the very fact that I'm playing this shows about the good FPL, the good mental health side of playing FPL.
Yeah.
Is because I've actually really enjoyed it, even though I haven't been doing very well. I've just really enjoyed it each week. I love the simulated matches, and because we all missed FPL.
I really enjoyed writing about it, doing the roundups every week. It's a great thing to write about, and hopefully to read about as well.
And, and to be honest, it's a lovely break away from quizzes for a little while. I don't know about you, but
how dare you? I write one of those every week.
No. I mean, with friends doing like a pub quiz kind of thing on Zoom or something.
I did a Father Ted one 2 weeks ago.
Did you? Father Ted quiz?
It was hosted by one of the guys that used to be in it. Really bad, because I can't remember who. I think he was Father Damon. Was he like the cool young
Father Damon? You mean Jack Grealish?
Douglas' friend. Jack Grealish.
Father Damon. Yeah, I can't remember what the guy's name is now. Joe something.
Right.
Yeah, I can't remember. But yeah, he hosted it, and we just did it on Facebook Live, basically.
Wow.
Didn't do very well though.
Wow, that sounds good. But I've been trying to take a tiny break from quizzes, for a little while. But I'll be back on them, because apart from Neale's ones, I got 9 out of 20 for that last one, by the way, that Neale did for the 2014 season.
I think that the lower score you get, that reflects better on you as a person.
Yeah.
If you're still,
it was a long time ago. I couldn't quite remember Soldado, can't even pronounce it, and some of those others then. But I'm sure that we'll be having a quiz at some point ourselves. Maybe. So I'm not all down on quizzes. But it's been great chatting. Hopefully we've really helped some people. I hope some of the issues that we've raised, have been really, really chimed with people. Whether they're good and bad, because it's not all bad and it's not all good.
Can I just fit? Here's the quote that Apple Bonkers Doug tweeted. He said, "FPL is an escape, yet it's also hard to escape from. It's a tricky but ultimately worthwhile balance." So I think that's pretty much what we've been talking about. It's great to play, but you need to balance time away if you can't. If you're finding it hard to escape from, you need to try and get away from it. So I quite like that kind of tweet from Doug.
Yeah, and I think that's a fitting way to end. But yeah, so goodbye, both of you. Goodbye, everyone. Thanks so much for joining in. But yeah, goodbye from me.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye, all.